For Sinister, spine-chilling tales of the cursed and haunted unexplained discoveries in the woods. Sarah Johnson walked briskly, feeling the chilling air wrap around her like a cold blanket. She glanced back at her children, their faces lit by the sinking sun. Caleb, her adventurous son, remained just a few steps ahead, eyes wide and curious. Lily, her daughter, moved slowly, clutching her mother's hand tightly. They had ventured into the forest behind their quiet home in Willow Creek, enticed by the ghosts of autumn leaves. But every snap of a twig sent tremors through Sarah's heart. There was something sinister about the woods tonight. As they walked deeper, the trees began to loom overhead, their twisted trunks appearing almost alive, reaching out with gnarled branches. The air turned stale, thick with an eerie tension. Sarah remembered the chatter she'd heard around town about things that lurked in the shadows, unspeakable terrors connected to flickering streetlights and rusted signs warning of dangers past. As if conjured by her thoughts, the wind whispered through the branches, carrying with it a warning or perhaps a curse. Then they stumbled upon it, the decaying playground, shrouded in darkness. The swing swayed back and forth, creaking eerily as if invited by unseen hands. "Mom, look!" Caleb shouted, pointing, spellbound. The rusted slide bore graffiti that seemed to leer at her, "Beware the Watcher." Her breath caught in her throat. She tried to laugh it off, but dread clawed at her insides. Shadows stretched out, making the playground appear more monstrous. In a moment of naive curiosity, Caleb darted forward, all bravado and little caution. "Caleb, come back." Panic clawed at her voice, but he was undeterred. The whispers crescendoed, threading through Sarah's mind. "Hey, over here." At that moment, the gentle rustling of leaves morphed into mocking laughter, a chilling reminder of her growing isolation. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The laughter faded, and Lily suddenly pulled away, eyes wide with fear. "Mom, I saw someone in the trees." A cold shiver danced up Sarah's spine. Her heart raced, pounding like a war drum against her ribs. "That's just your imagination, sweetie," she whispered, though a part of her began to wonder what was real and what was born from deep-rooted fears. But as dusk settled into night, the woods transformed into a living creature, rustling with memories not meant to be uncovered. Sarah's every instinct screamed to flee, to escape this cursed place. Yet she felt tethered, the whispers, the laughter, the shadow of something ancient lurking. Whatever it was alive, and whether it breathed in the form of her neighbors or something more unfathomable, Sarah knew one thing: it was watching, waiting. And she would find out what horrors lay ahead, or they would find out her. But in the depths of the shadows, the line between hunter and hunted faded away, pulling her deeper into the plague of fear that enveloped Willow Creek. The shadows grew thicker, wrapping around Sarah and her children like ivy, tightening their grip as the temperature dropped. The swings creaked softly, echoing an unsettling lullaby that seemed to call to Caleb. He stood transfixed, tugging at the rusted chain of the swing, a smile creeping onto his mouth as if awakened by the ghosts of laughter. "Can I try?" he asked, oblivious to the dread weighing heavily on Sarah's heart. "Not here," Sarah urged, stepping forward, but her voice came out with barely a whisper. Instinct churned inside her, some primal urge that begged her to protect her children from the darkness encroaching around them. Lily shivered beside her, hands trembling as she looked up, eyes wide and filled with unshed tears. "I want to go home, Mom, just give me a minute," Sarah said, as her feet carried her closer to Caleb. The wind picked up, howling through the skeletal trees, its mournful cry drawing closer, wrapping every loose end of their reality into a tight knot of unease. The warning graffiti played in her mind like a mantra, "Beware the Watcher." "Caleb." She called again, her voice sharper now, cutting through the thickening gloom. "Get away from the swing." But something more than age and rust held Caleb's attention. A shape flickered in the corner of her vision, dark and shadowed. It moved like a wisp of smoke, retreating into the trees, yet it felt tangible, almost human. No, not human. It was something far worse, she realized. "Mom?" Caleb took a step back, his brave facade cracking. "What if it's just playing?" "Playing?" Sarah shot back, panic rising. "This isn't a game. We need to leave." Caleb hesitated, confusion coloring his features as he turned toward the blank-eyed pupils of the looming trees. In that moment, a gust of wind sent leaves spiraling, swirling around them like a devilish cyclone, drowning out the faint sounds of the town behind them. "Mom!" Lily screamed, pointing at a figure drifting near the trees. A silhouette with elongated features, too tall for any normal person. It stood still as if observing them, its dark form blending into the dimness. "Run! Run!" Sarah yelled, fear igniting her every limb. She grabbed Lily, clutching her tightly with both arms, and darted toward Caleb. But he was rooted frozen in a trance where the invisible tendrils of the night pulled at him. "Caleb!" Sarah screamed, eyes blazing. The edges of her vision blurred. She felt the cold, creeping tendrils wrapping around her throat, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Slowly, she reached out for him, her heart racing, thundering in her ears. "You need to listen to me. Now!" And just as her fingers brushed against him, like an electric pulse, the figure moved, gliding silently. It shifted just enough for Sarah to see its face, a featureless void, an airless cavity that reeked of despair. The air itself cracked under the weight of her realization. With a renewed burst of determination, Sarah yanked Caleb's arm, their feet pounding against the gravel as they began to run. The laughter echoed behind them, wrapping around their heels, haunting and relentless. But as Lily stumbled, the darkness surged forward, hungry and clawing for what it wanted. The trees twisted, forming a barricade ahead, and the path they once traveled turned into a labyrinth of shadows. Panic enveloped them, the world spinning into a vortex of uncertainty. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, thrusting her children ahead of her, fear coursing through her veins as she fought against an unseen force dragging them back. They dashed under the low-hanging branches, each step heavier, each breath more labored. But as they neared the fading light of the last glimpse of the playground, a deafening crack echoed through the air, stopping them in their tracks. "What was that?" Caleb's voice trembled. "I don't know," Sarah whispered, dread tightening its grip around her heart. As they turned, the air thickened, feet glued to the ground. Behind them, the figure loomed larger, an indeterminate whisper now palpable as the darkness surged closer. "Mom," Caleb faltered, voice barely a whisper, even as he clutched Lily tight against him. The shadows swallowed them whole. And the last flicker of light within those cursed woods fell into oblivion. What awaited them in the suffocating darkness? The air hung heavy, a suffocating blanket that pressed against Sarah's chest as the shadows curled tighter around them. Her heart raced, each beat shouting for her to move, to protect her children. Caleb stood frozen, his once charming face warped with confusion and fear. Lily's grip on Sarah's arm sent tiny jolts of electricity through her, grounding her in this reality, even as terror gnawed at her mind. A low growl resonated from the depths of the trees, as if the darkness itself had grown a voice, hungry and waiting. "We have to go," Sarah hissed, pulling harder on Caleb's arm. "Now!" The woods felt alive, the weight of innumerable eyes watching their every move. The silhouette inched closer, its elongated figure morphing with the shadows until it seemed to stretch across the very air that surrounded them. "Mom!" Caleb finally broke his paralysis, shaking his head as if to clear some fog. "What is that?" But before Sarah could answer, the growl crescendoed into a cacophony of whispers, indistinguishable yet eerily familiar, swirling around them like a storm. Sarah's head spun. They were killing her sanity one slither at a time. "It's just the wind," she lied, but her voice trembled with doubt. Lily whimpered, her small frame shuddering. "I want to go home, I want Dad." A flash of fear scattered through Sarah, the reality of that simple wish barreling into her like a freight train. They were alone. Dad was gone, leaving shadows and whispers where warmth used to live. "We will get home," Sarah promised, though the words felt like half-baked courage against an overwhelming tide of fear. Suddenly, the trees around them shifted and moaned. Branches cracked like bones, forcing them to take a step back as the ground beneath them pulsed like a living entity. "This way." Sarah grabbed Caleb and Lily's hands, sprinting towards a narrow gap between two gnarly trunks. As they slipped through, not a second passed before the shadows seized the chance, thickening and coiling like serpents trying to reel them back. "Run!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging through her limbs, propelling her forward into the inky abyss. Caleb stumbled, his shoe catching on exposed roots, and Sarah felt the world slow as she turned. "Caleb!" she cried, but his frightened eyes met hers just as the figure surged closer, its void-like face almost indistinguishable from the blackness around it. "Help!" he gasped, reaching out, his small fingers grazing the tips of her outstretched arm. In an instant, Sarah's heart screamed against the terror that reached for her son. This wasn't just darkness, it wanted them. With a desperate lunge, she grasped Caleb's arm, pulling him from the treacherous roots just as the figure lunged forward. The piercing howl that followed filled the air, chilling them to their bones. It pierced through the suffocating fog, echoing their fears, their despair. They burst into a clearing, a flicker of moonlight illuminating the tangled brambles. There, in the heart of the nightmare, stood a decrepit and broken playground eerily similar to the one they had just fled. Bumblebees hummed in the quiet, mysteriously out of place, like they were hiding more than just sounds. "What is happening?" Caleb's voice rose, barely above a whisper, his small hand trembling in Sarah's grip. I don't know." For the first time, doubt seeped into Sarah's tone. Desperation clawed at her gut. They had to keep moving, but every direction felt perilous, potentially trapping them in an endless loop. From the shadows, the whispering returned, now palpably taunting. "You shouldn't have come here." The words slithered through the air, wrapping around her like barbed wire. "Mom!" Lily cried as she pointed towards the trees. Something moved, shapes twisting and forming almost human-like in the moonlight. "Look!" Before Sarah could respond, a figure stepped forth, an apparition. An ethereal child with hollow eyes and a tattered dress that appeared to flare in a breeze only it could feel. Its mouth opened but no sound came, only the echo of laughter faded into the night. "Turn back. You shouldn't be here." It finally wailed, the sound bending and breaking against the hollow wind. Fear constricted Sarah's throat. "What do we do?" she gasped, pulling both children closer, fright making the muscles in her arms quiver. The darkness shifted, the tendrils wrapping around them tighter. Their path seemed to vanish into the murk. And then, just as sudden, the figure disappeared into the trees, the laughter lingering long after its form was gone. "Is it gone?" Caleb's voice cracked, words barely escaping him. "I don't know." A new sound emerged from the woods, deep and resonant, and it cut through her uncertainty. Footsteps. Many footsteps closing in, surrounding them, the whispers swirling back into a relentless cacophony. In that endless night of doom, riddled with shadows and lost children's laughter, the air thickened with dread. Whatever haunted the woods was angry. And it wanted something far more than just their fear. What would happen if the woods claimed them completely? The ground beneath Sarah felt alive, pulsing with unease as if warning them of an impending storm. Shadows twisted and turned, the deep growl escalating into an angry chorus that sliced through the darkness. She could feel the panic threatening to swamp her like a tide. "See Mon," she urged, her voice barely a whisper, if only to keep the wall of fear from crashing down completely. Caleb's eyes darted around, wide and desperate. "Mom, where's the way out? Just stick close." The words escaped Sarah's trembling lips as she searched for any sign of escape. The oppressive heat draped around them, pressing heavy against her skin. They needed to move, but every direction felt like a trap. Lily trembled beside her. "What if it finds us?" The thought cut deep. The whispers grew louder, swirling like a storm in her mind. "It won't find us. We're not staying here," she asserted, pushing panic down with willpower. But deep down, she could feel it gnawing at her resolve. Then, without warning, the laughter returned, an eerie, high-pitched sound that reminded Sarah of distant memories. It echoed through the trees, filling the air with a feeling of malignancy. She shivered. They were no longer just being watched, it felt as though the very forest embraced something sinister. Mom. Lily mocked the name, her voice dripping with an echo of hurtful mirth. "Turn back." It was the same hollow tone the apparition had used. "We can't turn back," Sarah countered sharply, trying to shake the icy grip of fear. But her daughter's voice now seemed to reverberate in her skull, each word growing heavier. What if the woods were right? What if she had brought them to this point of no return? Keeping her grip firm on Lily's hand, Sarah turned to face Caleb. "We have to go now. No more waiting." Ignoring the whispers that tugged at her sanity, she tugged her children onward, pushing through the overgrown thickets. As they pushed further into the dark heart of the forest, the laughter morphed into agonizing screams, distorted and haunting. "Run!" The command fell from her lips like a prayer, a desperate plea to rally their spirits. However, the path twisted and turned beneath their feet, each step forward dragging them more into the thicket's suffocating embrace. A low rumble echoed in the distance, vibrating within her chest like the beating of a war drum. It marked time, counted breaths, and measured their fear. Something was getting closer. "Over there, Mom!" Caleb shouted, pointing toward what appeared to be a faint flicker of light through the trees. Hope ignited in Sarah's chest, but she had learned that hope could be deceptive. "We could reach it." Whether the light was salvation or further doom, she couldn't dwell on that now. "Let us go," she cried, sprinting toward the glimmer, an oasis of promise in this vast desert of desolation. But as they approached, the light flickered uncertainly, revealing what lay ahead. The clearing was filled with silhouettes of children, pale and sorrowful, their ghastly forms gliding silently in a sickening dance, swaying like shadows disturbed in the night. Lily's hand went limp in Sarah's grip, and Caleb's grip tightened in fear. "Mom, what are they doing? They're trapped." The realization seized Sarah's heart. The shadows were forming into faces now, frozen in a lamenting scream that pierced the night. "We can't stop. We can't," but the moment hung in the air, and a terrible realization crashed down on them. The children weren't just trapped, they were inviting them to join, to become another echo in the darkness. Something cold brushed against Sarah's back, slithering into her thoughts. The trees shifted, creaking ominously, and she felt the roots entwining around her ankles, ready to pull her into the ground. "Run!" Just as they turned to flee, the shadows erupted from the ground, grasping at their feet, eager to claim their flesh and drown them in despair. The cacophony of cries surged around them, the anguished wails piercing her resolve. "Keep running!" She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, thundering like a war drum. But just as they thought they had escaped the clutches of despair, the whispers rose into a deafening roar. "Stay!" It beckoned, tugging the visible seams of reality apart. What if this forest was not just a sanctuary of nightmares but something far worse? "Mom!" Caleb's voice was near breaking as they sped toward the cascading light. "What if it's a trap?" Sarah skidded to a halt, breathless, as a figure emerged from the shadows. You shouldn't have come here, it crooned, its voice echoing a grim melody that sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. And that when they knew, they had to unravel the truth before it unraveled them. But would the shadows let them escape, or was the playground of their fears only beginning to reveal its true horrors? The figure stepped closer, its silhouette blurring and shifting like smoke. Sarah's heart raced. Who are you? She managed to gasp, fear curling tightly in her throat. The only answer was that chilling smile, stretching unnaturally across a face that seemed to melt and reform. You've arrived just in time, it whispered, the words heavy and thick like molasses, pulling her deeper into dread. We've been waiting for you. You shouldn't have come here, but now that you have. Lily whimpered beside her, tightening her grip on Sarah's hand. She could feel Caleb tremble at her other side. Most terrifying was the realization that there was no way back. The path was lost, the screams of lost children had merged with the whispers of the forest, and the noises swirled around them, drowning out reason. Sarah took a stride back, dragging her children with her, but the figure moved with a fluid grace. You seek escape, but this is a place of choices, it crooned, its voice slicing through the air like a blade. Do you remember your last decision? What do you mean? Sarah replied, her voice a ragged edge, barely a breath. Every path you've taken led you here, into our embrace. You felt it, didn't you? The pull of the darkness? It spoke to you, guiding your footsteps. The shadows seemed to whisper back, a chorus of lost hopes and dreams echoing in the twisted branches above. The clearing began to warp around them, the silhouettes of the trapped children now merging into a grotesque carousel. Their eyes were wide, empty, lost to despair. Each face flashed snippets of memory, flickers of joy before their laughter had twisted into wails. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. It's a choice, you see, the figure continued, a skeletal hand gesturing toward the swirling abyss. Stay and join them or fight against what binds you. But know that to fight carries consequences of its own. Run. Sarah's voice tore free as the ground trembled beneath her feet, shaking her very foundation. She turned instinctively, dragging Caleb and Lily along just as the laughter rose to a cacophony, an overwhelming tide pressing against her chest. They raced back the way they'd come, the darkness clawing at their heels, the trees closing in, a suffocating prison threatening to crush them. A terrifying thought slithered into her mind. What if the darkness was not simply around them, but within each of them? Mom, what if it knows our fears? Caleb shouted, his voice rising over the screams. What if it's searching for something, for someone? Answers felt distant, but she knew one thing, they had to keep moving. Don't look back. She yelled, pushing her legs harder, fighting the panic threatening to seize her body. The path they had thought was clear began to fade, twisting into an endless loop as if mocking them. But just as hope flickered with the idea of reaching safety, the trees parted to reveal an ominous archway, cloaked in thick shadows. A chill fell over her, its grip icy and suffocating. What if that's the way out? Lily whispered, fear lacing her words. I don't know, Sarah breathed, the weight of indecision crushing her spirit. Then the shadows surged, pulling at her clothes, clinging to her, and she felt their desperate need. They weren't just shadows, they were something alive, something hungry. The taunting laughter spiraled around them, growing closer, louder. Mom, let us go. We have to try. Caleb urged, but every instinct told her to run the other way. What awaited them beyond those twisted branches? Salvation or an even deeper curse? A decision loomed perilously close. As they took a hesitant step forward, Sarah's breath caught. Wait. We need to make a choice. In that moment, the laughter fell silent. It was a moment of eerie calm, but deep down, she knew it was a prelude to a far worse nightmare. Will you join us? A whisper echoed from the shadows, sending tremors through her spine. And in response, a deeper growl began to rise again, rolling through the trees like an echo of wrath, stay, or go. What choice would they make? Would they confront the darkness within or let it envelop them completely? As the silence thickened, dread coiled around Sarah's heart, paralyzing her. The shadows danced with restless energy, reverberating with whispers that kissed the edge of her mind. Stay, or go. The voice became twisted, overlapping, as if 1,000 tormented souls were pleading from within the darkness. Mom! Please! Caleb's voice cut through the quiet, raw and desperate. We can't. Before he could finish, the ground shuddered again, the forest groaning under a weight that felt far older than her. She felt the children's fear like a pulse. It echoed in her own heart, quickening its pace and clawing at her insides. But there was something electric in the air, a tension like a rubber band pulled too tight. The choice weighed heavily on her shoulders. She looked back at the archway, the dark entrance that beckoned like a mouth hungry for souls. Would it spit them out or swallow them whole? Can't we just run? Lily cried, tugging on Sarah's arm, her eyes wide and shining with tears. They're going to find us. Caleb exclaimed, glancing over his shoulder as if he could already feel the presence nudging closer. Then we run. Sarah decreed, steeling her resolve. Without another word, she turned her back to the smirking void of shadows and bolted into the underbrush, with her children tight beside her. Branches scratched at her skin and roots twisted like serpents beneath her feet. The cacophony of their escape was soon joined by a haunting symphony of laughter. It was no longer just behind them, but ahead, echoing through the trees. Mom! Caleb shouted. It's everywhere. A dreadful realization gripped her. The laughter morphed into screams that twisted into familiar tones, like echoes from her past. Faces of those she lost flickered before her friends, family, each just a heartbeat away until they faded, swallowed by anguish and despair. Don't look! She urged, pulling them forward as darkness crept with a slithering cunning. They stumbled through limbs and brambles, blindly running, each breath a laborious struggle. Out of nowhere, Caleb cried out, Mom! Over there! His outstretched finger pointed toward a small beam of light cutting through the trees, wrapping around an old signpost that looked almost too pristine for this place. Which way? Sarah could barely breathe, torn between desperation and instinct. Maybe it's safe. Lily urged, eyes wide with hope. Or a trap, Sarah countered, the thought clawing at her insides. But she had already started toward the light, seduced by the potential of escape. They edged closer, and the air grew thick, swirling with a pleasant warmth that felt like a strange embrace. The sign read Hope's End. The irony twisted like a knife in her gut, but they were too far now to turn back too deep in the web of choices. Suddenly, the laughter from behind roared up again, filling the forest as shadows lunged forward, reaching for them with tendrils of blackness. Faster! She screamed, an adrenaline surge propelling them. The light pulsed closer, and with each step she could see forms swirling just beyond its reach, desperate, twisted faces emerging from the depths, mouth agape in eerie bliss. Sarah's heart thudded violently as she lunged toward the glowing mystery just ahead, clutching her children tightly. The darkness writhed at her heels, and she could almost hear its promise. Join us, but in a frantic jolt of panic, they charged toward the light, praying for salvation. Just as they were about to reach it, a deafening screech filled the air. The shadows snapped at the edges of the light, pushing them back with primal rage. Then, as everything threatened to collapse, the light flickered and dimmed, revealing the archway once more, but this time it was not an escape, it was an invitation. Mom, we can't! Caleb shouted, his voice trembling with fright. In that moment, Sarah felt the darkness lazily unwind behind them, waiting for the inevitable that was yet to come. A choice still lingered, but as the shadows coalesced, entwining once more with the trickling light, Sarah realized no matter which path they chose, the haunted whispers would never truly let them go. What were they prepared to sacrifice to survive the night? The shadows beckoned, tightening their grip. Was this truly the end of hope, or merely the dawn of a new horror? The moment hung heavy in the air, like a noose tightening around her neck. Time seemed to slow. Sarah's mind raced, measuring the distance between safety and oblivion, the pulsing dread behind her urging her to make a choice. "We need to move," she shouted, the order bursting out of her. She turned back toward the sign, her heart thrumming violently as shadows rushed closer, tendrils reaching with a chilling intent. A shriek pierced the air, and she could feel the oppressive darkness pressing in, suffocating. "Mom!" Caleb yanked at her sleeve, tugging her away from the archway that had now morphed into a grotesque grin, full of empty promises and lies. "Hold on to my hand," Sarah cried, grasping Caleb and Lily tightly, their fingers intertwined in a vice of fear. They spun away from the archway, driven by instinct as they sprinted forward into the wilderness, deeper into the suffocating gloom. The howls of anguish faded and then swelled, a horrific chorus echoing their flight. Every frantic step felt like a misstep into a world where reality warped and twisted underneath them. Suddenly, the forest opened up, revealing a small clearing, moonlit and eerie. Pale light cut through the trees, illuminating terrible, distorted shapes on the ground. They stood frozen, hearts pounding like war drums. "What is this?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. The ground was littered with remnants, broken toys half buried in the earth, a child's shoe, and pieces of what looked like crushed doll faces, staring up at them with glassy eyes, mouths frozen in silent screams. The grotesque tableau sent a fresh wave of ice through Sarah's veins. "What happened here?" Caleb's voice cracked, the boy's innocence clashing against the darkness of the scene. "Keep moving," Sarah insisted, the command sharp enough to break the spell holding them captive. She turned to lead them back, but the shadows whispered again, urging her to look closer, to understand the nightmare they were entangled in. "Mom," Caleb's voice held a quiver, panic pooling in his eyes, "what if we don't make it?" The question hung between them, a chasm of dread that threatened to swallow her whole. "Just don't look back." She tugged them forward again, not sure if her own fit of bravery was sufficient to shield them. But the whispers grew, wrapping around them as they stepped further away from the clearing. Shapes darted in their peripheral vision, things just out of reach, clawing for their attention, their hope. As they surged onto a narrow trail, they stumbled into a pocket of heavy fog that enveloped them, thick and stifling. The temperature dropped, and with it, their spirits. An unearthly stillness fell, as though the world had drawn a breath. "Mom?" Caleb's voice was barely audible, a thread through the suffocating quiet. "Stay close." Her heart raced, but her voice remained fierce. They pressed on, determination fighting against despair. Then came the whispers again, clearer this time, echoing from the fog, "Stay, or go." The words slipped into Sarah's mind like an icy dagger, twisting as they spoke. Shadows flickered through the mist, enticing forms emerging just beyond sight, weaving in and out of the fog with sinister grace. "What are they?" Lily cried, her small frame trembling. "They're trying to trick us," Sarah responded, fighting the urge to look. But curiosity clawed at her. She glanced over her shoulder, just for a moment. The shadows coalesced into figures, faces that melted into an array of familiarity lost ones, twisted with a sorrow that was achingly beautiful and horrifically wrong. Her memories, tainted, reaching into her, promising comfort, lured by despair. "Get away from them." The words erupted from her throat, forcing her legs into motion. They bolted ahead, the fog swirling frantically, howls of dismay betwixt the desperate cries of the fallen streaming toward them. Sarah could almost feel the shadows reaching, beckoning for her to join, to surrender to the familiar pain that wrapped around her heart. But they needed to fight. They needed to resist. Sudden clarity shot through her like a bolt of lightning, dousing those whispering shadows. "We need to find a way to break this," she shouted, gripping her children and pushing forward. Then, out of the thick haze, a figure emerged. An old woman, her eyes eerily bright against the darkness. "You must turn back," she rasped, her voice a tremble against the wind. "You cannot escape what haunts you." Panic surged anew. Who was this woman? What kind of trap had they fallen into now? Fear twisted into a knot in Sarah's gut. Where would they find safety? Where would they walk free from the grips of their nightmares? As they inched forward, caught in the web of looming dread and dark promises, the question resonated: what kind of horror awaited them if they chose to ignore the warning? They were not in mere peril, they were creeping toward the heart of a nightmare woven with their own fears. And just like that, she realized. The game was far from over. The shadows were growing restless. What awaited them at the end of this path? Would hope reveal a new ally, or would despair swallow them whole? As the first tendrils of dawn crept through the fog, the choice loomed before them once more. The old woman's eyes gleamed like twin stars in a stormy sky, filled with a knowing dread. Sarah wanted to scream, to lash out, but her voice was trapped in her throat as the shadows pulsated around them. "Why? What do you know?" Sarah demanded, her hands tightening around her children. "Everything you fear is rooted here," the woman croaked, her voice fragile. "You have walked into a web, dear. A web woven of sorrow, regret, and forgotten voices." Each word dripped with foreboding, and behind her, the fog twisted as if alive. "Stop it!" Lily squeaked, trembling. She clutched Caleb's hand, her knuckles white against the encroaching darkness. The old woman beckoned them closer. "You can escape, but you must face what is hidden inside. The truth will burn the shadows away. Or they will consume you. Forever." Caleb swallowed hard, his young mind struggling with the gravity of their situation. "Mom, we have to go." But the woman raised a gnarled finger. "Listen. The past cannot be buried. It seeps into the earth, devours the light. You are not the first, and you will not be the last." As her words wrapped around them like a shroud, Sarah felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. It was an earthy rumble, a distant echo of anguish. The grave remnants around them, the toys, the shoe whispered secrets of loss. A chill slithered down her spine, awakening old memories she wished to forget. "Move!" she shouted, breaking the trance. The fog thickened, the air turned sharp and cold as they pushed onward, leaving the old woman behind. But whatever had been said clung to her thoughts like bitterness, warping her every breath. They plunged deeper into the woods, their path punctuated by gnarled roots and branches that spoke of many years forgotten. The whispers grew softer, but the fear never faded. Instead, it morphed into something tangible, creeping into her skin. What if she was right? Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. "What if we can't get away?" "Stop!" Sarah snapped, trying to cage her own rising panic. "We will get out. I promise. We just need to keep moving." A deep rustle echoed nearby, the sound wrapping around them like fingers of dread. They halted, hearts synchronized in a frantic dance. Before them, shadows pulsed like grounded thunder, solidifying into figures, a twisted parade of anguish, memories long buried. "What are they?" Lily gasped, pressing against Sarah. "Just shadows," Sarah urged, injecting as much false courage as she could muster into her tone. "They aren't real." But the echoing cries crept ever closer. Faces became clearer, each one a grotesque rendering of lives that could have been of laughter trapped in cry, of joy perverted to sorrow. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she recognized fragments of her own life, wrong decisions, fallen dreams, all brought to life by the darkness surrounding them. "Mom." Caleb tugged on her arm, his eyes wide. "They look like I know. Just keep moving." But as they pressed on, the path began to fade. Each step felt like an eternity. And soon, the oppressive weight of despair settled around them, heavy and suffocating. Then, like a breath of wind through the stifling air, Sarah caught the glimmer of something ahead. Light? Hope. She pushed them forward, desperation morphing into adrenaline as the world around them smudged and warped. Beneath the light, figures danced in chaotic harmony, layers of dust swirling in celestial patterns. A promise of salvation or an omen of futility? The ground pulsed beneath them, each heartbeat matched by the flickering glow. "Mom! What's that?" Lily pointed, her voice shaky but determined. And as they drew closer, realization dawned, a wave crashing over them. What lay beyond was not the sanctuary they sought. Threads of shadows mingled with the light, an intricate tapestry of horror and the grotesque. "Turn back!" The echoes cried, the shadows turning malevolent. But it was too late. Whatever was waiting had decided. They were trapped in a storm of choices, and the light beckoned while darkness surrounded them. As the first crack of dawn lightened the edges of the forest, Sarah was met with a chilling thought: there was no escape if they could not confront their fears. The light pulsated fervently, pulling at her heartstrings, while behind them, the shadows howled, wails rising like smoke. What choice would they make? To step into the light or sink deeper into the shadows? In that moment of terror, filled with disbelief and despair, an unbearable question hung in the air: what if the decision they faced meant losing themselves forever? The light flickered at the edge of the woods, a beacon of hope that felt as fragile as a candle's flame in a storm. Sarah felt the tension in the air, thick and buzzing. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, to shield her children from what lurked beyond. But there was no retreat from the truth that echoed in the depths of their minds, a haunting reminder of the old woman's warning. "Mom, I don't like this." Lily trembled, her small voice breaking. "Shh!" Sarah whispered urgently, trying to drown out the rising tide of panic. "Stay close." The shadows shrieked behind them, a cacophony that surged like a wave. Figures twisted as if caught in a gale, their faces morphed into grimaces of despair, eyes glinting with a familiar sorrow that spoke of choices made long ago. They were pulling her back, demanding to rewrite the past. "Make a choice. Light or shadow." The words echoed, distorted through the air, leaving behind reverberations of something ancient. The borders between their world and the nightmarish landscape blurred, stretching reality until it felt like a thin veil waiting to tear. Caleb shook his head, his voice a drop of fear that rippled through Sarah's resolve. "I don't want to go in there. It's dark." "I know, honey, but we can't stand here." Sarah took a trembling breath, her heart racing in her chest. The flickering light seemed inviting, but it held secrets that twisted her stomach into knots. Each beat echoed in her ears like a drum calling them toward an inevitable fate. But what choice was this? Choosing the light could guide them to freedom, yet a step into that brilliance might also plunge them deeper into their hardest truths. The shadows whispered lies that clawed at her thoughts, reminders of her failures and regrets danced like cruel specters around them. Before she could respond, the air shuddered around them, pulsating with a heartbeat that felt alien yet familiar. The ground beneath her churned, an unsettling reminder that the woods held more than just trees and nightmares. "Mom!" Lily squeaked, clinging to her leg. "I see something moving." From the depths of the light, swirling shapes began to emerge, shimmering but indistinct, like fragments of memories spilling from an open book. Faces shifted, one moment familiar, the next unrecognizable, fingers reaching out, desperate for connection. "Don't look. Keep your eyes on me." Sarah forced the command, her voice slicing through the oppressive dark. Yet the pull of the light overshadowed their own fears, a magnetic force against which they will struggle to contend. She could feel Caleb's little hand slip against her grip, his curiosity and fear battling in his wide eyes. "Are they real?" he asked, voice trembling, as a shadow took form beside the flickering light, its shape undulating, alive with woe. "Mom, please!" The shadow screeched louder, a cacophony that surged like a storm tide, reflecting her own indecision. She felt dizzy, pulled in both directions, back to safety and forward toward revelation. Which would yield salvation? A shudder ran through the ground, and the figures writhed, their distorted faces suddenly morphing into grotesque versions of her own expression: pain, despair, loss. Each sharp gasp ricocheted through her mind, dragging her deeper into the haunting past she thought she had left behind. "Mom, we need to decide. Now." Caleb squeaked desperately, his grip tightening. Together, Sarah whispered almost to herself, a prayer for courage. "We have to face it together." But in that moment, just as resolve began to build, the ground shifted violently, as if reality itself was fracturing around them. The light flickered and dimmed, darkness creeping in like a slow tide. A final, breathless moment lingered, the air thickening with dread and anticipation. The shadows closed in, despair tightening around their throats, and the eerie chorus crescendoed, the choice looming larger than ever. As they stood on the precipice of their fears, the question hung heavy in the air: what if stepping into the light meant exposing their very souls to the darkness that wanted to consume them? Before any choice could be made, a chilling whisper emerged from the shadows, curling around them. "Choose wisely or lose them forever." Sarah's heart raced, terror igniting an instinct to flee, yet something deeper, darker, pulled her into the unknown. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find deliverance, or would the shadows devour them whole? The moment stretched into an eternity, the very fabric of reality trembling with tension. Sarah's heart beat like a frantic drum in her chest. The shadows writhed around them, pulsating with desperation, while the light flickered, a beacon of hope teetering on the edge of extinction. "Mom, please." Caleb's voice quivered. "I can't do this." "Neither can I," Sarah whispered, panic tightening its grip on her. But they had to make a choice. The ominous presence behind them churned with dark intent, shadows reaching out like clawed hands eager for capture. "We can't let them win," she said, her determination surging amidst the whirlwind of fear. Lily clutched her hand tighter, her small voice barely breaking through the fear. "What if it's not safe?" Sarah squatted down, meeting her daughter's wide, terrified eyes. "We're safer together. The shadows want to break us apart." She turned her gaze to Caleb, who stood frozen, his young mind wrestling with the realities they faced. "We have each other, no matter what. We will fight." With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah let go of their fears, focusing instead on the light ahead. "We have to confront it. Whatever that darkness has in store, we'll face it as a family." That statement electrified the air around them. The shadows hissed louder, the cacophony intensifying, but she wouldn't yield. Together. As they aligned themselves, gripping each other's hands with unwavering resolve, they surged forward toward the flickering light. Each step felt monumental, weighed heavily by the sobs of the lost trying to capture them, but their determination burned brighter than the darkness around them. The light enveloped them, blinding and warm like an embrace, releasing the tendrils of despair latching onto their hearts. With every stride, they moved closer to the heart of illumination, shadows flailing behind as if tethered by an unseen force. But Sarah felt them weakening, the power of their unity breaking the curse laid upon the woods. "Don't look back," she commanded, though deep down she felt the echo of familiar faces and forgotten dreams trying to sway her. Then came the moment of collision. The light absorbed them, swirling into a whirlpool of brightness that ignited every corner of her spirit. As they burst through, it was as though they had flown into the dawn itself. But the dark whispers followed, shrieking in agony as the clearing around them transformed. The once ominous playground materialized again, but now bathed in sunlight, colors vivid and alive as if the dark curse had somehow been lifted. "Where are we?" Caleb gasped, eyes wide as wonder danced in them. Sarah knelt and brushed her fingers against the grass, inhaling earthy sense of freedom and life. I think we're safe." Lily clutched Sarah's arm, amazed as she looked at the playground without trepidation. "It looks nice." In the fading darkness behind, shadows twisted, losing their shape and density, as if hollowed out. They whispered, "You will return. But not today." Whether the forest still held on to its horrors or not was no longer any concern for them. They had conquered the fear that wrapped around their hearts, facing the darkness with unwavering unity. "Let us get out of here," Caleb urged, finally stepping forward, the grip of despair unnoticed as they journeyed back toward the path leading home. Together, they walked hand in hand, leaving the remnants of fear behind. The woods held secrets, but no longer were they bound by them. The laughter of the sun-filled day accompanied them in bliss, a harmony ringing loud against the grief of the shadows, as they knew they defaced something insidious and emerged victorious. As they stepped into the clearing of sunlight, surrounded by the mundane beauty of autumn hues, Sarah glanced back at the forest no longer intimidating but strangely serene. "Mom?" Lily asked, looking up. "Will we ever have to go back?" "For now," Sarah said, her heartbeat steady, "let us enjoy every moment of living free from fear. The woods may still whisper our names, but we are stronger than any darkness." With those words, they headed toward home, the warmth of sunlight illuminating their path, every shadow of dread fading behind them, replaced by the light of hope. And just like that, they were reborn through their own resilience, ready to forge a future beyond whispers, beyond haunted memories, where joy was their new compass. Now, don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe to the channel immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.